Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you from Film Fanatic for another show. Hope everyone's doing good. I just did two shows recently on these two incredible movies that I just bought. I was in Waterville on Sunday, and I went to go see the new Martin Scorsese movie, Killers of the Flower Moon, which was just a fantastic movie, and I was really it was really a great film going experience for the most part. It was a pretty lengthy day, but I did a show on that. I did a review of the film about Monday. I put out a video of a review of Killers of the Flower Moon on Monday, so check that out. When I was in Waterville, I ended up going. We were going to go out. Me and a friend, my friend Erin Kirkpatrick, who is a pretty big movie buddy of mine. She goes to even more movies than I do, and so we. It was the early show, so we decided that we were gonna like get some dinner afterwards. But there was still some time before that, and so we. She had the idea of going to Bull Moose, so which was very cool. So that's where I picked up a few movies, and I didn't expect to buy any more movies after last month or a little less than a month ago because I'm still working on cranking out these other movies. But very cool. Two amazing films, especially this one. Happy Birthday to Me. This one was a film I had never seen before, and this was one of the best. This is definitely one of the best slashers I've ever seen. It instantly moved. You know, we always, as fans of media or what have you, whether it's film or music, you know, certain bands, certain directors, certain genres, you know, we all have our like natural lists of things that we like the most, or that there's certain films or certain albums that we'll probably always, you know, go back to or listen to or watch. And and you know, a lot of the times, me being now that it's Halloween, the Halloween season, Halloween is just a few days away. People are doing, you know, their top 10, top 20 horror films of all time. I was going to do a show around that kind of thing, but for me it's like Halloween is my favorite holiday, but as far as like decorating and getting in the spirit of Halloween, or like watching movies that put me in that state of mind, for me, I do that anyway. There's no difference. I don't like decorate my house because I don't decorate my house any differently because it's kind of decorated in the Halloween aesthetic all the time, and I watch horror movies all the time, and you know, and so it doesn't. It's not any different for me. I was gonna do a show on that kind of thing, but I'll do a specialty show on Halloween. But I I decided not to. So we all have our lists, and then people are doing these formal lists of films. And I definitely have that too. I have my group of films that I kind of always go back to. You know, I, I'm a pretty big avid fan of collecting movies, and music. So you know, if I like a movie, I'll tend to watch it a bunch of times. I don't usually have a thing of where I watch a movie and then, okay, that was good or that was great, and then just kind of stick it away and just it just sits there collecting dust. I will, you know, probably watch that movie a bunch of times, if not at a high rate. So I kind of naturally do that. But after I watched Happy, and being that my favorite genre of film is horror exploitation, and anything in the world of exploitation, but especially horror and slasher being my favorite, Happy Birthday to Me moved instantly to that list, like whether it's formal or informal, to the top of the list. Like, just an incredible movie. I had never seen it. I had heard about it and kind of came across it. It's got the infamous cover with the guy being killed with the shish kebab, which is like kind of the notorious artwork. And so I've seen this movie in stores and I'd heard about it, but never actually watched it. And then the other movie I bought, which I did a show on, is another movie that is another just awesome slasher classic, and that is The Slumber Party Massacre. Really fantastic movie. Another movie where I kind of kicked myself for never had seen them before, but I'm super excited that now I own both of them, and they're both really good quality Blu-rays. So I did some shows on both of these films, so check those out. Those were both uploaded yesterday. So yeah, lots of films to get to, lots of films to talk about. There's never a shortage of material to get to. It's always a blast. And so today's show is going to be probably another specialty show. I'm going to talk about some new things. I'm going to be talking about this won't be a regular review. This will be about some news I heard recently. About I think it was about a week ago, and I think it happened. I think it actually happened about a week ago, 5 days or so ago. But it was recently announced that Best Buy, the big major uh, company that has for years specializes in all things in the physical media realm, they just recently announced that they are completely um, discontinuing, and they're not selling any more movies. Basically, no more DVDs, no more physical media, no more DVDs, Blu-rays, 4Ks, no more CDs, nothing. And the other thing that was really crazy was even their online site. They are also doing away with it. So all physical media is now obsolete as far as Best Buy. And when I first heard about it, I didn't really, I don't know, like I was, I don't know. It took a while for it to kind of settle in. I didn't really. I saw it as I came across this podcast, this YouTube channel, which I've gone on to really like, and they had this guest. There was a guest on the show who worked for, or and does work for a lot of these distribution companies, especially in the exploitation world. And the whole show was about you know this whole this big news. And I started to watch it because again, it's a real deep interest of mine. It's probably my biggest interest, or it is my biggest interest. I suddenly like it brought back lots of memories and in a very nostalgic way. But then um, I started really thinking about it a lot. So I decided to, and it was one of the most interesting interviews I've seen in a long time. And so I decided to, I've been thinking about it since. So I decided to do a little show talking about this situation, in regards to access to physical media, movies, and all those things, and Best Buy closing. And it brought back a lot of memories because I realized, like, it was weird because a day or two after I saw this podcast and heard about this news, I realized, wow, like Best Buy, that was when I first got into movies. Best Buy was really the place that I started buying my movies. All my DVDs. When I got before college, when I was in high school, um, and things like that, I always loved horror films. But as far as like buying them, my parents had owned DVDs here and there, but not a lot. VHS, and that was the way growing up. VHS was the way I got into horror films and into movies. And through high school, I was always, I got into certain horror films big time, but I never was a collector. I used to watch movies a lot. And when I got into college, I got into film big time because I had a couple of friends that were really into film and they were very knowledgeable, especially about horror films. And they were very knowledgeable about particular directors. That's how I got really into directors like Akira Kurosawa or Stanley Kubrick, where I used to identify, I had seen their movies, especially around Kubrick. I had seen, The Shining and Clockwork Orange and, a bunch of his other films, but I never really took an interest in Stanley Kubrick, the man per se, or really taking that deep dive into checking out his, incredible and also really prolific body of work. So it wasn't until then when that happened in college, I generally was like, wow, like this is some cool shit. This is great. This is fascinating. This is like a whole new interest. And then when I got out of school, when I got out of college, I remember buying my first, DVD player and buying it was right when the DVD craze had just hit. So it was like going like gangbusters. And I remember buying my first surround sound system. And I started actively, buying movies. And I remember we used to go as a family. I used to go up to Bangor a lot, and I used to always go to Best Buy. That was the place, and I used to go there I don't know, every few months, and buy DVDs. I used to buy like a lot of new releases, mostly new releases, but all kinds of movies. I remember buying all the Evil Dead movies then, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, all kinds of movies, and that was my first kind of introduction to being, the collecting aspect of being a movie fan. And I started buying all kinds of movies, and I did that for a couple of years, for a few years. And they had, back then DVDs were the big thing. They were the thing that really kind of took over the market. They had, it totally, pretty much killed. Even though now it's different, it's coming back, but or it has this weird sustainability around it. But it essentially killed VHS, killed it dead, and also like the really short life that Laserdisc had, which in comparison to DVD, or I should say, into comparing the lifespan of VHS, it's there's no real comparison. It's almost like saying taking something that's been around for say 10 or 15 years compared to something that was around for like equivalent to 6 months. It died. There are people who still buy laser discs. There are places that still actually sell used laser discs, which is crazy. But as a whole, it's been dead. And so for about 3 or 4 years after college, in my early 20s, I started buying movies, tons of movies, tons of DVDs. I would go up to Best Buy and I would spend a whole day in there, and it was great. And um, I got some updates or upgrades for my TV at the time. Got some TVs there. Got some like new sound system equipment. What have you, and it was great. And they also had and I remember when I would go there, they had this massive movie selection. It was amazing. Like there was so much stuff there, and they also had a massive CD collection or section. And I used to buy CDs up there all the time too. I used to buy lots of albums, and it was fantastic. Their movie selection though was very very good, and it was a regular thing. And I would go there and look forward to it. And also, when I would go, I would spend a few hours up there easily, and it was great. It was like that feeling of like you know, I still get that feeling. I almost get that even more now when I go shopping, which is probably a problem because I will spend more money. But I get that feeling when I go shopping for movies and music, but especially movies, that I get that feeling like I'm a little kid on Christmas morning, where I'm just like really excited. I can't wait to check everything out. And I lose complete track of time as to what time of day it is or even where I am. It's just wonderful, and to me, it's my favorite thing to do. So it was a wonderful experience, and I did that for like 3 or 4 years, and then so after that period, I had gone. I went down to visit actually a college friend who had actually turned me on to a lot of films, and it was down in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And my friend Sharon Russell, who was actually a guest on the show last year, and he had told me about, well, we should go check out this place called Bull Moose Music. And I was like, what is that? And he's like, oh, it's an amazing shop where you can store where you can buy music and records and all kinds of movies and all this shit. And I there was the at that time Bull Moose. I mean, this is going back quite a few years. Bull Moose was had a bunch of locations in Maine, and also I believe there were a couple in New England, and the main one was in Portsmouth, and he lived in Portsmouth. I had never been to a Bull Moose before, and I had never checked it out. And I went to this Bull Moose, and I was floored. I was blown away by how amazing the shop was. I was blown away by the selections that they had. Everything was labeled by category. You had your death metal section, you had your electronic music section, you had your hip hop section, and then for films the same thing. And I was just like enamored, and I totally fell in love with that shop. And then after that, I never. It's funny because I never went back to Best Buy. I found too that their selection at Best Buy was even, or I found that even that Bull Moose, their selection was way better than Best Buy. I was, because Best Buy, although it was really great and fantastic, they they specialized and they had all kinds of titles, but their strength was newer releases. For the most part, they did have a lot of old school movies, but for the most part, they would have newer films at the time. Whereas Best Buy had all new releases too, but they had a lot more obscure films. Films that were being released on DVD that you wouldn't really see anywhere else. And there was just so much of it. There was so much quantity and quality that was on display. So I fell in love completely with Best Buy, and I'm sorry, with Bull Moose. And then I never ever went back. I never went to Best Buy again. It was really strange, and but it was great because I discovered this new shop, and then I realized, wait, there's all these other locations, and Portsmouth is about 4 hours, 4.5 hours from where I live here in Maine. And then that when I discovered it, I realized, wait, there's all these other locations, and they're all within an hour distance. They're all around the state. So that's when I started buying movies. That's what I did, and I've done that since. And now I've over the past years, I have now I consider it my home away from home, and so that's my place. That's my jam, and I never looked back. I never went back to Best Buy. And I kind of it was weird. I kind of forgot about that period, on how that was a real integral part to my introduction to being a film fanatic, if you will, and also just being that started me off being a collector, and ever since then I've been buying movies regularly. So something else, So when I heard about that, I was like, oh wait, and then it took me a day to realize, oh wait, I do have this like huge history and a deep connection to Best Buy, and up until a few years ago, I used to go down Thomaston, Maine, which is about an hour away from here. One of my best friends lives in Thomaston, my friend Mike Whitehead, who plays bass in my band Quantum, we we've done a lot of like projects together outside of Quantum, and but our main thing is Quantum, and we've recorded a quite a few albums down there at his. He's got a studio down in Thomaston. Now his studio is mobile, so he can travel with it. So like the last two albums we did it here at my house. But before that, we recorded all the albums at his place, and then we've also done recordings in other projects, and they've been down at his house also over the years. So during this time, and it was probably about 5 years ago or so, I was down in Thomaston a lot. We were doing this one recording, and I think it was a Quantum album. So I would go down every week to do some recording, and then I also there was a venue, the Highlands Cafe, which was open at the time, and we were playing there also. So I was down in that area uh, basically every week, and then I started going to Walmart of all places, which I don't like going to. But at that time, they had this giant bin of films, Blu-rays, and I just couldn't believe it. They were selling tons of Blu-rays, super cheap. So I got in the habit of, you know, going there. And you would go by the media section, and they would have this thing that was like basically like a swimming pool, that was like a kiddie swimming pool filled with movies, and it was just like full body deep. I mean, it was unbelievable. And I used to go there every week and buy movies, and then they stopped selling movies altogether. Um, that was the first time I saw that it was a big place, a big box store that stopped selling media, and it was a big, a big change. That's when things started to really change here, because of streaming and all these other things. So, it was very interesting. And now I'm full on collector, and I buy movies all the time. But, and to see where things are going, um, when I think just at face value, I think about the time of where I'm at now as a collector and as a fan of film, compared to say when I was going to Best Buy, and that was my go-to place. Um, I feel happier at this place. I feel more inspired, more fired up about films, more educated about films than I was then, and I have more, you know, uh, a deeper taste, or even more to a degree, a more eclectic taste, and I think I have even more of an open mind to films now. But it's better. It's more enjoyable. So when I go to Blue Moose now, it's just like even more of a thrilling experience. But you know, this interview and how I heard about this whole show, this guy who was on the show had worked for a bunch of these video companies. One of the big ones was the biggest one was Vinegar Syndrome. Vinegar Syndrome basically is one of the biggest players as far as companies that distribute and re-release all kinds of great exploitation and grindhouse classics. So they were talking about how this isn't, it's a complex thing with Best Buy taking the step. They all said that it was shocking that they did away with even their online sales of physical media, which was even more extreme. And on one hand, the consensus was, well, that's it, physical media is dead and it's going to be gone. And he basically was on the show saying, well, no, it's not. It's going to always be around in some capacity, but it's going to shift and change. And it was a very interesting talk, because I didn't realize how much a lot of these companies kind of relied on a lot of these sales, and even with these big box stores and companies, and this closure or eradication of DVD or Blu-rays and all physical media at Best Buy definitely has a ripple effect, and definitely will affect the industry. So I don't know where it's going to go, but he was saying on how this various companies were had deals with this big company, Best Buy, and they would, a company would actually be making more money off of their movies than, say, streaming services. And he went pretty heavily into the streaming service and talked about the strike that just happened, and how, well, the feeling that I got was that this whole streaming thing is really kind of built to fail, built to collapse. And he was talking about the percentage that, filmmakers get, or companies, what they actually make from streaming, is actually like, 2 cents, 2 or 3 cents per movie. So, and meanwhile, like he was using an example, like say Disney Plus or Hulu. Meanwhile, the companies, the people who are running the companies are worth, millions or billions of dollars, but the actual content creators are making absolute shit off of these films. And it's they're financing a lot of these projects, but when the products are done, or the films are done, they're distributing them, but they don't make actually any money off of the actual thing. I didn't realize how incredibly low and how kind of disgusting it actually is. Like literally 2 to 5 cents. And over the last few years, it's gone down from like, 5 or 10 bucks or whatever it was, and then it's gone down even more and more to where it's at now. And there's kind of this, you know, um, air around it, or this aura around streaming, that, I mean, not only is it because it's the attraction, is because it's convenient for the public, but outside of that, you kind of get the sense, well, that's the way to go. Like that, this is the most efficient way to see movies, or the easiest way, and it's good for the filmmakers because there's so much content. But when you actually look behind the scenes a little bit, it's like, no, how is this, how is this, how is it possible that any of this can be sustained, because nobody is making money, and it's this weird kind of, um, I don't know, almost like a Wizard of Oz scenario. Like you peek behind the curtain and you realize that this is all just, a bunch of propped up kind of bullshit, and it doesn't really mean anything, and nobody's making money, and it's this like weird facade around it, and at the end of the day, it's kind of this hollow thing that can't really sustain itself, but yet that's all we hear about, and that's all we, that's all we hear about as far as people. This is how people watch films and their TV shows and whatnot. So really interesting. And if he was talking about too, if other companies follow suit, like with Best Buy, which could happen, that's a possibility. Where it could really hurt that market. And I don't know. I really think, in my own opinion, being a collector, and I am not a specialist, you know, about the markets per se and how those things work. I look at it. I'm mostly just steeped in being just a fan of these films. But I see, like, I honestly don't see these labels staying around 5 years or so. I feel like you've had these, 5 or 10 years where it's been just this crazy renaissance. You can find the most obscure, you know, absurd grindhouse movie, and it's being given this incredible treatment by, by some company, whether it's Severin or Mondo Macabra or Blue Underground. I mean, there's so many companies doing it, and where they get this immaculate, treatment for these movies that, to a degree, were never been seen, or they had a little bit of a rush, or to a degree popularity or success, in the late 60s or 70s, maybe, when they got released, when the world of exploitation was a huge thing, and people were in that business to capitalize on this crazed fan base that were into these films. And then it kind of just died. And you had all of these movies that were very initially successful, but then it spawned all of these other films that were, trying to make a statement or to be included, and they went and they didn't. They failed. They went into total obscurity, or they didn't get that distribution deal. They went like directly to VHS or whatnot, and they were forgotten about. And now all these companies are like putting this light, showing and putting all of these films and this amazing genre, and putting it on display and giving it this treatment, and it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. The fact that you can get like a Herschel Gordon Lewis movie on 4K now is fucking insane. It's totally. It's in one part of my brain, two parts of my brain. One part, it's like, it's fucking crazy. Like I remember talking to my friend Sean about that last year. And like the most obscure fucking low budget, trashy movie you can find on Blu-ray or 4K, and it comes with like a beautiful package. There's all these bonus features. A lot of them come with the soundtracks. There's commentary. I mean, unbelievable. And some of them are listed 25 to $30, and it's just like it's crazy. It's totally crazy. You would think it would be, movies that you think get that kind of treatment a lot. Especially companies like say Criterion, are movies that are like, movies that are considered to be film classics, or movies that have won. You take a movie like that might have won, a particular year, say a year in like 1979, or it could be any year, a movie that won, say, all of the Academy Awards that year, and it was like this big sensation in the box office and blah blah blah. Like movies I could think of, like say Steven Spielberg's Schindler's List, or like M. Night Shyamalan's like The Sixth Sense, a movie like those kinds of movies of where they're great films, but they are commercially, in everyone's homes. They're like American apple pie. They're so well known and highly prolific. They were huge in the box office when they came out. They won every award when they came out. Those movies you could see, okay, there's going to be all of these editions of those films, and they're going to get all of this incredible, this royal treatment when it comes to their release on DVD or Blu-ray or 4K. Not a fucking Herschel Gordon Lewis movie where like, the audience is so small, the people that are into that kind of stuff are like totally crazed and amazing and into cool shit, and know, I think, literally generally know what cool shit is. But you would never in a million years think something like that you could find Blood Feast on 4K. Like, that's fucking crazy. And in the other part of my brain, because that is the case, I just think it's like, if you're a movie collector, it's the best fucking time to be alive, that you can find these fucking titles, and the quality of these movies, after like watching a lot of these films growing up as a kid and on like really shitty VHS, and a lot of these films were cut, or re-edited, or just like, and especially films that came out of the video nasties list where they were purposely cut and censored. And now you can see these movies totally uncensored and just as they were, and it's amazing. It's amazing, and I think for a collector and just being a fan of media, it's the best time to be alive. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's the best period I have ever seen, as far as if you're into movies and if you like to buy movies. It's the best time I've ever seen. But, it's kind of a boutique kind of thing. It's a niche. It's kind of it's kind of this trend. It's gotten trendy, and I don't think it's going to last all that long. I don't know how it can last all that long, but at the same time, that's why I'm buying up as many of those kinds of films as I can, because I love this shit more than anything, and I don't know how long it's going to last. I don't buy anything online because I don't buy anything online because, and I don't watch anything online because I just think, I understand people do it, but it's just convenience, and maybe to a degree it's a little bit cheaper, but not really, but it I think the way that way for me of getting media um, or accessing media sucks because it's impersonal. It always goes back to, I've always explained it before, and I know I've talked about this in other videos. For me, a book that I always have loved is a book called High Fidelity, and they made a movie out of it with John Cusack, and it's a really great book, a really cool movie, and it's essentially about a guy who works at a record shop and his like relationship with his customers, and it's that whole thing of where you go out and you're searching through the bins, you're checking out the artwork, you shoot the shit with some of the owners or with people who work there, and it's about that discovery of like holding something and being like, oh, this looks awesome, or I need to buy this, or what the fuck is this? This looks amazing. Whether it's a book or an album or movies, and in this case, it's mostly around films. Doing it any other way outside of that, to me, where you just click on something online, it like kills almost the entire experience for me. Um, to me, that is one of the biggest allures and the biggest attractions is going to a place, being in a place of where there's all of these physical choices and things to sit through. That to me, to a degree, of obviously buying the movies is incredibly exciting, but to me, the actual space that you're in mentally and the interaction with the physicality of the people who are there or the environment is almost the biggest attraction to me about that experience. So, like I said, this whole thing was about hearing about, well, the way this idea started for the show was about hearing the news about Best Buy, you know, killing all of their physical media that they sell. And it goes back to that very experience when I was in my 20s and I would be buying DVDs there. That's totally what it's the same thing, and it hasn't changed. It's got more, if anything, it's got more enjoyable and more exciting. But the experience itself is the same exact thing. I think of it too of like I've seen it happen where, during the last few years, music wasn't a thing. Going out wasn't, you couldn't really go out to eat, and obviously concerts were eradicated for a long time, and it was just a horrible situation. And so bands were doing, these streaming concerts, and it's like, you have to kind of adapt to, those kinds of things because things are fucked up. And in some bands, I remember seeing some interviews where they're like, "No, we don't. We'll wait. We won't do it. We're gonna just wait, or we want the live setting with an audience. We want that interaction." And this past year, like I hadn't gone, like most people, hadn't gone to any concerts in a long time, and I've been going to some big concerts, and I've tried watching concerts, the streaming kind of thing, and it can be good. You have, it can be interesting, it can be fun, but to me, it's like not even close to seeing that band live or being with an audience or even seeing footage where there's an audience because it's about that energy. And to me, it's exactly that same thing. It's just, it's void of any kind of emotional connection to me. So, and we'll see how things go. I mean, I don't think nothing lasts forever. And I think with how things are moving at such a fast pace with technology, just so quick, it's impossible to see where it's going. And there's no stopping it. It's just, it's a case of just adjusting to it. It's indifferent to how you care or how you feel about it as the consumer. Whether you are set in your ways or whatever it is, it's gonna just happen. So, it's very interesting time. But anyway, this is just a little rant and a little talk about the news about Best Buy closing and killing off all physical media. So interesting times, crazy times. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.